All right. So this is officially the Rules Subcommittee, scope of which is included in the Rules and Regulations document that is found on the website. So you have a dirty.
It's my kids.
Oh my God.
Don't blame me.
We'll call the meeting to order. First agenda item is to elect officers.
I would like to elect Jamie as our chair.
I would love to second that.
Vote. All right. Any other nominations? Okay.
Yeah, is there any other nominations?
All right.
Since I elected all of those in favor?
Thank you all.
Congrats.
Unanimous.
Great. I have all the experience of doing this last time. So we did this about 3 years ago, I think. We did a full review of every word included in this. So I still have my notes from that.
Oh, great.
But I left them at home.
It's okay. Clean slate.
All right. Do we need any other officers? Do we need a secretary or other nominations from the floor for someone to take some notes and keep us in order and do the official scribing?
Is anybody interested in it before we do that?
I'm already doing it, so.
I would like to nominate Bridget McBride.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Do you have any references?
Let's clean up my last one.
But seriously, is that okay for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
How many words a minute can you type? That's what it should be. You can type the fastest.
All right. So, if I get anything wrong with how to run meetings officially, someone please step in. You have probably more recent experience, you guys do.
No, I let Brian run it yesterday, pretty much.
All right. So I think the first thing, at least in my mind, would be for us to agree on what our agenda, our scope will be for this subcommittee. I think the one thing we know is that whatever is in here is sort of in whatever we want to address within this would be in scope. And if I look at the table of contents, it's beaches, marinas, open space, playgrounds, parks and field locations, playgrounds again, field use, cemeteries, and skate park. I think the focus when we talked in the committee was number one, marinas, specifically Yacht Club. There was a specific issue that needed to be addressed there, and the timing of that's important to get us up to the date they could release the permits. And the other point was looking at the field usage. So that would be our focus initially, but we're certainly welcome to go through any of this that we want. I think it's pretty clean. Why don't we start with, do we all, any discussion on scope? Does that sound reasonable?
Yep.
Okay.
What's our timing on all of this? Do we know? I know that your piece is pretty time sensitive, right?
Yeah, for Yacht Yard, that's time sensitive. I think everything else, the field usage too, I thought, because of the permits.
Galen, what do you need from us from a field usage standpoint? And do you have a sense of timing?
Yeah, ultimately the league starts to provide their schedules for the upcoming season in February. I would say that nothing that's going to be discussed in this subcommittee will be life-changing in terms of the way that I issue permits.
Yeah.
And so if the priority is the marina and getting those details finalized, we can absolutely take like a second, step back and a second foot along on field reservations.
Okay. On tonight's agenda, we have, both of those items on, so I think we can agree to focus on those two things, seeing that they're timely, and then we can certainly set a calendar and decide what we would like to do, whether it's monthly, moving forward until we kind of fit all the areas.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
All right. So the specific issue on the Yacht Club, if you can explain that, and then we're happy to do that. And then afterwards, if we want to, I would like to make sure we have at least a general discussion on the field.
Yeah.
Just to understand what kind of issues we might want to wrestle with or not.
Sure. So I'll go with Yacht Yard here. I'm sure you've all looked at the marinas part of the rules in section 16. Has a lot of things in there, and unfortunately when it comes to measuring of vessels, I believe when we were doing the last couple go-arounds, it's predominantly, or it only discusses vessels at South Benson Marina, because there's two ways that we measure boats there. The small and the medium boats, we measure from the very forward point on the boat to the D-rings on the stern of the boat. The reason we do that is those boats are attached with frog arms, these metal brackets that swing down from the dock and hold the boat out. Those frog arms are a fixed 48 inches long, so it really doesn't matter what sticks out after that on the boat, because it's going to stay in the same location, and it's really the front end of it.
So when you say D-rings on the back of the boat, like if this is the back of the boat, there's two D-rings, and then the things on the dock come down and secure? Okay.
And the D-rings are on the smaller boats. They're where you would put your tie-down straps on when you're trailering the boat, so that the boat doesn't fall off the trailer.
Okay.
The large slips, they're tied up or secured to the dock in a more traditional manner. And for those slips, we really care about the true overall length of a boat. The very forwardmost point of the boat to the very backmost point of the boat. So if you have a boat with an outboard, and the outboard's trimmed up, we measure from that point to the front point. If it's a boat that has a swim platform and that's the furthest thing from the back, that's what we want to know. We want to make sure that that length is less than 36 feet. If it's more than 36 feet, it will then impact the boats across the fairway and whatnot.
So it's too big, in other words. They're going to be sticking out.
If it's over 36 feet, it's not allowed in the marina.
Okay.
They either have to modify the boat to make it fit, or they can't bring the boat into the marina.
Okay.
Do we know which, I was just looking for it in the rules here, what point it is
I believe it was $16W. So for the purpose of assigning slips, measurements are based on an overall length from the factory installed attachment points on the stern to the furthest forward projection. In the large boat category, the overall measurement stated as the footprint per application to include the outboard motors in the up position.
Why do I not see it?
It is X, actually.
It's X.
Is it X? Okay.
Yeah.
It's on page 10.
Okay, there it is. Okay.
I've got a draft here, so mine might be a little off.
Okay.
Where does it mention the length, though?
It doesn't specifically mention the different size requirements of in the rules. That's in the actual application process. Same with for yacht yard. So for example, for small boats at South Benson, it's 14 foot 1 inch to 22 foot even. Mediums are 22 foot 1 inch to 24 foot even, and then larges are 24 foot 1 to 36 even. And that's on the application.
Okay. So you're not asking us to evaluate the actual rule with the numbers themselves, just the way that you measure.
The mechanism. You can measure a boat 57 different, a bunch of different ways. You know.
How do other marinas do it?
Some it would vary depending on the marina. Some marinas might just measure the length on deck, so the front of the boat to the back of the boat, not include the outboard.
Okay.
Some of them might measure the length overall measurement, so that it's whatever that forwardmost point is to the aftmost point.
Yeah. Okay.
Historically speaking, at Yacht Yard, I've followed the smaller slip rules. As it's a segue. If we measured the true length overall, that would eliminate a certain number of boats that could actually fit in the Yacht Yard slips, but then couldn't fit in the South Benson Marina. They'd be in that kind of no man's land. So I just kind of followed what my predecessors had done. There'd been boats there with outboards on it. So it's like, okay, we're not measuring that part of the boat, we're just measuring the hull of the boat. So the reason why I brought this up to was last year I had several complaints I had a complaint of a vessel that was too long, and I measured it, and sure enough, the hull length was 15 feet. So I was like, yep, you have to remove your boat. That slip holder understood and removed his boat. But then I started looking at some other boats, and that's where we have some that are at 14 feet or 14 feet, and a couple inches, and I don't have anything in here that has the guidance on how I'm supposed to enforce that.
Okay.
Specifically at EIR.
Specifically at EIR.
Got it.
And these are all the tie up on the platforms.
Yeah,
that are
they
right.
tie up. For those of you that aren't familiar, let me see if I can
I
pull
was
it up
looking
here.
at it when I jumped in
Um,
on the 1st of January.
So I've got just the Google Maps. So we're talking about the boat. This is down in Southport Harbor at E Yacht Yard. The boats that are on this little U or N-shaped dock, and also the boats that are on this side of this long dock there. It's referred to as a dinghy dock. So any of the folks that have a mooring in Southport Harbor, they have to have a way to go access their boat that's out on an anchorage. They access it via a dinghy. There are also some of the permit holders in here who don't have a boat out on the mooring, but they just have a little dinghy that they use to go out, go fishing, go explore the islands, things like that. So it's really those folks are the ones that use this space. You can't fit a 20-foot center console in this area because there's just not room for those kinds of boats.
Do we own the moorings out in harbor?
The harbor master manages the moorings out in Southport, and they are actually in navigable waterways, so it's actually overseen by the state. So you don't have to be a resident to have a mooring in Southport Harbor, whereas you have to be a resident to have a slip at South Benson Marina.
There's no moorings at South Benson, right?
No, just docks.
And that's just that line right along there.
Yeah, so
Okay.
all
Okay.
those,
There's a bunch of.
and then
So all of that?
I didn't
all
realize
of that.
there's so many.
But up here is the yacht club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of these boats are members of the club, and they don't. They get to the boat via a launch service.
Yeah.
Typically, the folks that have these in here are all the folks that have the dinghy. So.
And so they jump on a dinghy from that small dock that
Correct.
shuts out. Okay.
And then the dinghy can be anything from, I've got a range of boats. The smallest boat that I have there is a 6-foot little rowboat, so about the size of this desk, that you get in and you row out to your boat, to boats that are right at that 14-foot. The maximum that I'm going with is a 14-foot with an outboard and whatnot. So.
Other than the complaint that you had, which basically sparked you to look to see is there a problem, and is this a safety issue? Is this more a maneuverability?
It's a maneuverability issue, especially in this section between the two docks, and also on the other dock here. Obviously, if a boat's too big, you can see where this homeowner has their boat on the dock. You know, if you had a 20-foot boat sticking out that way, everybody that's inside of that wouldn't be able to get there. And obviously, at low tide, there's a lot less water in that area, so getting in and out can be a challenge. The tide almost helps limit the size of the boat that can work at those docks.
Justin, can you go back to that other dock, the U-shaped dock? Yeah. Now, So you're putting small and medium-sized boats in there, right?
No, that's all 14-footers and less.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Nothing, most of these boats that you're seeing, especially here along the side there, those are all 13.5 to 14-foot Boston whalers. There's a specific Boston whaler, the 13-foot, which really measures 13.2. That is a very prevalent boat at that marina because it fits the rules that we've established. And it's also a boat that you could take you and your kids out, or just a couple people out for a stroll or a little ride around Southport Harbor, or even out to Westport and whatnot. So it's those are the type of boats that are typically there.
So if we implement your suggested measurement scheme, are there boats that will fall out of place?
There are, to my knowledge, 3 boats that would fall out.
3 boats here.
3 boats in this section here that would fall out because they do measure over 14 feet from the front of their boat to the stern of their boat. And we're talking, one of them measures 14.6, 14.3, so we're only talking a couple inches, but it does exceed the limit.
Yeah.
What happens to those boats if they leave? Where do they go?
That would be, they could move over to South Benson, but then there would be a wait list for that, so there would be a time period that they wouldn't necessarily, they wouldn't have a place they'd have to trailer them and whatnot.
So they could keep their slip if they got a different boat.
Or they could either modify their boat, or get a different boat.
Can they modify it easily, or
anytime I'm going to say the short answer is no, because if I start going into some of the details on it, we'd be here for a couple hours. But I wouldn't want to the boats in question, I wouldn't want to modify them to make it fit this rule. And there are 2 of the boats that are basically the same exact boat. They don't necessarily have a motor on them all the time, so they're literally only taking up 14 feet 2 inches when there's this other 13-foot boat might be taking up 16 feet with the outboard trimmed up.
Oh.
So is there a way to maybe accommodate, so maybe grandfather in those 3 boats by assigning them like an outside slip and change the rules going forward and potentially accommodate them?
We don't assign slips at the dinghy dock. That being said, everyone kind of has their specific spot they like to tie up to.
Yeah.
But officially, we don't assign spots.
So I'm sorry. So all the boats we see here, they could be completely shuffled up the next time.
Completely. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
That being said, though, I can tell you that this guy always ties up here, and this guy always ties up here, and this guy always ties up there. And if you and I brought our dinghy over there our first year, we may be politely asked to move because that spot's already
move your dinghy.
Yeah. I think the 3 boats that are there, they're within the realm that I can see the argument that we keep those 3 boats in. We don't allow any more in, because I think that would be the best bet. I don't know if we specifically say that they're grandfathered in or not, but I think we can.
How long have they been there?
I know 2 of them, the boat is a 1966, and so I don't know if it's been there since 66 or 76 or 86, but it's been there for a while. The other one, I'd have to go take a look. I think it's a 2005 or something.
So I've been there for a while.
They've been there for a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if there's no specific reason, I
Yeah.
think it's good to set the standard, but
Yeah.
if there's no specific reason to disqualify a boat, I think that's...
And lose the revenue, right?
Well, I do have a wait list.
Oh, okay.
So, like,
Sorry
but,
about ruffling the feathers.
Yeah.
there's that.
Well, if somebody has a boat there, the person that has it there since 66, 76, 86, do they use it? I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter. It's still revenue for us, but
Yeah, I would say that one of these boats in particular, I know I see that boat go out a lot.
okay.
Some of them I might not necessarily see them go out a lot, but I can tell you that particular permit holder, he uses his boat and
Yeah.
and it's a boat that I'd want to have at that dock because it rows well and it motors well.
Yeah.
It does both things.
Right.
So do you only issue the number of permits that could fit here, or do we oversell? Like,
We don't oversell because there is a requirement that all of the boats have to be in their slip or in the marina or at Yacht Yard by July 15th. So it's not like a plane tickets or anything like that where we can oversell.
How many can fit there?
65.
At the end dock? Or that one and the other one?
That one and the other one.
Okay.
And to be honest, I haven't pushed the 65 in the last couple of years because it's been tilting in. I'm more like 60 or so. If everybody was getting little 6-foot rowboats, I would push 65. I might even push 70.
Yeah.
But now that everybody's pushing more of that 13 to 14 foot Boston whaler type thing, I also know that we have to keep it at a 65 range as opposed to right at the maximum. And unfortunately, we're not able to dredge that space because it's now considered intertidal.
It's considered what?
Intertidal.
Really?
Yeah. So they'll be dredging the Southport Harbor channel, but they won't be able to dredge around the dock.
So they need it?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
If you ever get a chance, go down there at low tide someday.
So what happens if you neglect dredging? What's the downside?
Eventually, the space will get silted in.
So you just basically can't put
Yeah.
boats in there because the water level's too.
Right. I mean, this will take over 10s, 20s, hundreds of years, but it can also happen like that with the right storm.
Yeah.
So, we have to keep on dredging at South Benson Marina and the channel and whatnot.
Yeah. I think it makes sense to, do what Jamie said and, grandfather those three in and just set the rule going forward.
I think so too. I think it just needs to be put in pretty specific writing just to the individuals, and once it's in the rules and regs, there's no other way around it.
Yeah.
Right.
I think we should document the three that are going to be, because you don't want to be in a situation where, somebody is saying they're over, and then, you got to show the documentation that, yes, we realize they're older, but they have been grandfathered in.
And again, we're talking about boats that are over by a couple inches to 6 inches, not a boat that's over by a foot or 2 feet or more.
Who does the measuring? You?
Yeah.
Nice.
Couple tape measures and just hopping on people's boats and measuring them out.
Yeah.
So do we have to actually write up the new rule, or is that something?
I think that's something that you guys. I have just some rough text that what I was thinking on, and I can share it with you. Basically, at the end of that X, I was going to say just dinghies at Yacht Yard are measured from the forwardmost projection to the stern. And I was thinking not adding anything about outboards or swim platforms because I didn't want to get too boat specific.
Yeah. But we do want to put in there an actual measurement, right? Don't we want to?
Like small, medium,
never-
large? Is that what you
The
mean?
measurement's
Well, I
never
would-
been in there, like the maximum
Yeah, it should be.
I think it should be too. I don't understand. I mean, I'm not a voter, obviously, but why would we not want to put that in there and be specific?
It's on the application.
I feel like because it's on the application and it's one of those that at that point it's back to the marina coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say decision, but this is how it's been. If at some point we need to change it, I would obviously bring it back to the Parks and Rec Commission
Mm-hmm.
to vote on. But I don't think that part needs to be the hard rule. I just need to have the rule of like, this is how I'm told to measure, or this is the parts that I'm measuring.
Okay.
It's
Because
almost like we don't put in the rules maximum capacity in one of our rentals, or things like
Yeah.
that. I mean, that's
You don't want
really
to turn
left
people
up to
away.
the operating.
Yeah.
And then also, if you did have to change it quickly
Mhm.
for whatever, a storm comes in and suddenly you don't want to have to come to a commission to have a change. I think it's more of an operating
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah. Just to have the recommendation for the full commission, would you mind if I got that wording one more time? Or I
Yeah,
can just
no
take
problem.
your notes if you
Yeah,
want me to just copy it down.
I can email it to you, but it's dinghies at Yee Yacht Yard are measured from the forwardmost projection to the stern.
Okay.
Good job capturing that, Bridget.
Stern?
Stern. S-T-E-R-N. And then if you have a couple minutes, I've got a couple others in the marina rules that love to
Talk.
Just one more question.
Yeah.
Sorry. Would everything else in section X be struck, and that would be the new section X?
I
Or would that be stuck? Keep
the-
everything else.
at
Keep
the-
that.
at the end.
Okay.
So
okay.
it would keep, it would go, hold on a second. That sentence about in the large boat,
Uh-huh.
ending in the up position,
Uh-huh.
and then dinghies at Yee Yacht Yard.
Okay.
I can email this over to you as well.
Okay. That would be great.
This is not something we have to have in the rules by February 15th, though.
No, because when I think that I can continue on
Yeah.
status quo, send out the email on the 23rd for renewals, and we're good to go. And when I have new slip holders coming in, I'll just say it's at 14 feet from bow to stern. That probably won't happen until at the earliest beginning of April.
Okay. So hopefully we'll have this all wrapped up by then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's another reason not to put the actual number in
Mm-hmm.
that needs to go through a commission discussion. It's really operating.
Okay.
All right. What else did you have?
All right, so in section 16B, the applications for the boats and town marinas, if you scroll down there, it says it must be received in the Public Works Administrative Office. We need to change that to Parks and Rec since I've moved over here.
This is
Mine
Parks and
says
Rec
Parks
here.
and Rec.
Awesome. Good job.
I'm sorry, which letter was it, Justin?
Yeah.
It was
it
B.
says Parks and Rec.
Okay.
Yeah, we already put that in. We
Magic.
anticipated it.
You guys are good.
We're ahead of you.
We'll keep rolling then. So then in what I've got is I, where it says a legal spouse or a deceased holder.
Mm-hmm.
A thing that I think we should add, especially with how long our wait list is, that we should also add deceased holder of a boat slip or a wait list member may retain, provided the spouse, basically, if you're on the wait list,
You stay on the wait list? You keep your place?
you pass away, your spouse doesn't have a spot on the wait list.
Doesn't have a spot on the
Does
wait list.
not.
Okay.
So just in case that happens, I think we should add the wait list member to it as a, or the other option, the other way it could happen is if there was a divorce and it was decreed over.
Mm-hmm.
That's how sometimes a slip can change a person from one person to their former spouse.
Mm-hmm.
So are you saying, so if a husband is on the wait list and passes away, then the spouse can retain that
Correct.
wait list spot?
Space. Yeah, correct. Because in this case, if they have a slip and they pass away, it can, and it's all obviously provided that they're still town residents and whatnot.
Yeah.
So how would we change that? That would be so
Just adding,
Adding after boat slip there, or a waitlist member.
And then we're doing it for the divorce as well.
Correct.
So probably we're after town marina. So a boat slip in the town marina or a place on the wait list.
Correct.
so a legal spouse of a deceased holder of a boat slip or waitlist member may retain.
You see what that is? So after the word of marina, put in or a waitlist
Or
member.
waitlist member, okay.
And then skipping down, I have it as O, where it says no craft using sails as the sole means of propulsion may be launched from floating docks or ramps at South Benson Marina.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to add or oars.
No craft using sails or oars, or sails only or oars.
Only, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an end for us, I think.
Yes, and why is there a discrepancy? Should we look into that discrepancy? Obviously, your list is a little different.
This was a draft, so I could have
Okay.
tweaked something
Okay.
and when it printed out. So I'll take a check to make sure some where
And after the word sails, it would just be or oars.
Yeah.
After the word only, right? Because we're saying sails only or oars.
Well, I'd put the before because I don't want somebody having their sails up and rowing at the same time and saying, "Hey, I'm doing both."
Oh, okay. So you're the only refers to the means of propulsion. Okay, got it. Sorry.
And the reason being, kayaks in the basin at South Benson Marina is really dangerous. We've got these big boats, and they might not necessarily see a kayaker or a paddle boarder, and we try and shoo all the kayakers over to the Ash Creek side of the peninsula and launch there. We've got the
Are we
dinghies.
keeping the word only in that?
I would keep only.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I would like to add one additional thing towards I was going to put it at the very end, just before that final one with the Parks and Recreation Commission and/or police. But before that, I'd like to put in its own separate and new one. Unpermitted trailers left on marina grounds will be fined $50 a day. Trailers left for more than 7 days will be considered abandoned. One of the things that I've done in the last couple of years is increase the winter storage revenue. We now have 150, 160 boats on trailers over the winter time. It's easy revenue for us. Mm-hmm. The only hard part is at the end of the winter season when the marina season starts ramping up. So we're talking mid-May. Sometimes people are slow on getting their trailers out. I'd like to have something that has a little motivation to get their boats out of there.
Yeah, definitely.
I saw some boats.
Yeah.
I was at Ash Creek
Mhm.
down there. I saw some boats out there, like in the marina.
Yep.
So they're allowed to be there.
There are folks that rent winter storage slips in the water.
Oh, in the water.
I've got probably 20 of those, and then what's been very popular lately is the trailer storage. That sold out in less than a week this past year. So
where would we put that?
that would be like just the very last, or second to the last.
So after Y?
Yes.
After all sailboats are required to be under.
I've got the permanent. I've got the private and permanent portable floating docks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That-
That's a big paragraph. That's
Yeah.
Z for
Z,
us.
so the one that would be after that.
Oh,
So the
so it
last
would be
one.
after, so the very last one before section
Yeah.
17.
What do we call it after Z?
Double A.
Double A?
Yep.
Sure.
All right, let's make sure
And
I
that's
have that.
Does the
$50.
marina ever freeze? Yeah. So if those boats are in the water,
We've got little ice eater bubblers to keep the water flowing,
okay.
and then DPW runs their work boat through the water to break the ice to loosen it up. Because two things can happen: it can crush the boats or lift the boats up, and it can also lift up the pilings. And so if it lifts up the pilings, then the pilings fall over, and yeah.
Is that $50 a day?
$50 a day.
Yeah.
And trailers left for more than 7 days will be considered abandoned.
Okay.
So if they do become abandoned, do we have a mechanism to remove them?
It's a process. Have to put a lien on it or have the police red tag it. The vehicle gets a special tag on it,
Mm-hmm.
and then eventually a tow company can come and take possession of it.
Okay.
And is this going to be like as the season opens, like this rule goes into effect?
I think it would have to go into effect. Yeah, if we could have it, I think because I put it in the contract already, so it would actually show, it would match what the contract says.
Okay.
So people, I mean, you can put it in up to July 15th, right?
Correct.
So they can't have a trailer sitting there until July
No,
15th.
so the marina opens April 15th. Your trailer has to be out of the marina parking lot May 15th, and that's kind of a rough date. It's usually Mother's Day weekend, or about that time period, so it's 2 weeks before Memorial Day weekend when the marina really opens and people start really coming down there. And that gives us time to clean up the parking lot, things like that. Summer trailer storage starts that following the Monday after Mother's Day weekend. So it also helps get all those boats out for that smaller summer trailer storage that we offer as well.
So is it clear that the effective date that we measure from in this, just given that we've been clear on the number of days, is there a hard date?
I
Or
think
is
it
it
should just, I don't think it should be a hard date, because I think it should also be if just some random person brings a trailer in. So not necessarily somebody that has trailer storage, has a trailer permit, but this will also work for somebody that just bringing their trailer over and leaving it in the lot because they would need it out of their driveway.
No, I was referring to that you have like after 5 days. Maybe we should.
After 7 days, it'll be considered abandoned. So the fine will be $50 a day for trailers that are less per day, and after 7 days, it will be considered abandoned. So they essentially only have 7 days of fines, and then it becomes abandoned.
Correct.
So maybe you can, if you say it's after Mother's Day, which is usually the first or second Sunday, so maybe after the second Monday in May, you can do something and then sort of, because Mother's Day is never really later than that, I don't think.
I think we have to put some
Yeah,
kind
that
of
way
date
it
on
keeps
it.
you,
Gotcha.
that's what you're saying, you want them for Mother's Day weekend, so that Sunday, that Monday, then clock starts ticking. You have 5 days from that Monday to have it out.
Or maybe you give like
Seems
an
so close to
ultimately
Memorial Day,
at
though.
such and such date,
Yeah.
they're abandoned. May 20th or something on this. Thinking to enforce this, it has to be pretty well defined.
Okay.
And so how would people know when the clock starts?
Oh,
Yeah.
That's what I'm really after.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
does the clock start? When does day one start? That I need to get out of there, that I'm being charged $50 a day. What's the event, or what's
Like, I would think Mother's Day is probably May 7th this year.
But then what about the people who
When's
are waiting
Mother's
till the
Day?
last minute to get their boats in? Is that the problem?
May 14th, actually.
Yeah, so that's,
Yeah, so that would have to be, that would technically be like the third Monday of the month. And that really gives you 2 weeks before Memorial Day.
but I would also want it, I'd like it to cover also, let's say somebody has a summer trailer storage, and that ends before the first, like the end of September. So like if you have a summer trailer storage and you don't come in and get your winter trailer storage, you would start getting fined at that point as well. So I'm trying to have this incorporate 3 different scenarios. The winter storage folks that haven't gotten their boat out by that 3rd Sunday in May, or 2nd Sunday in May. The folks that haven't gotten their summer trailer storage out at the end of September for the winter storage folks coming in at the beginning of October. And then the random individual, or the individual that doesn't have a permit at all and just sees trailers there and think, hey, I'm going to leave my trailer here, and puts it in a space.
So we could have the same rule that affects winter storage, summer storage, and trailers, miscellaneous trailers left in, and so the rule of 5 days, 7 days could apply to all of those,
Right.
And then we just have to figure out for winter and summer storage, is there a firm date that we say, like, is it May 14th? Is it
When I send out the contract, it has a firm start and end date.
So maybe our rule could refer to that
So
Parks and
1
Rec
month
will
after
define
the
the end
start
date.
date?
Timing to line up with your individual
And-
contract.
Right,
Okay.
each year Parks and Rec will define the end date for winter and summer storage. Once that date passes, then there's a 5 day and 7 day. And then that leaves you to define the date each year that you put in the contracts. And then maybe the last sentence says, regarding, miscellaneous trailers left in the, whatever. I think we need a separate sentence for that.
Okay.
But so everybody, on a yearly basis, they renew, you do a contract with them every year and communicate to them these dates?
Correct.
Okay.
So it's a first come, first served basis.
Mm-hmm.
And the winter storage always goes on sale the first business day of October. So normally it's October 1st. Last couple of years it's been the 2nd or 3rd, with how the weekend is fall. And then the same thing with the summer trailer storage goes on sale April 15th when the marina opens, or that first business day after April 15th.
So maybe something like each year Parks and Rec will define the end date for winter and summer storage.
Yeah.
That's good. And then
So then maybe for that added sentence, any unpermitted trailers left on marina grounds will be fined $50 per day, and trailers left for more than 7 days would be considered abandoned.
You ever get that?
Occasionally somebody puts a trailer down there. Yeah.
And then when you tell them, they're like, oh, I thought I could take it out of the driveway and shove it on town property.
Yeah.
Is the volume of those instances low enough where you could reach out to them and say, hey, your trailer's here, today starts the 7 day, you're going to be fine starting?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's basically I want to have hey, look at per Parks and Rec rules and regs, right here it says you can't just leave a trailer.
Okay.
How do you get in touch with them? Do they have their information on it?
It can be challenging because not everybody has their trailer registered. Like when it's the summer and the winter trailer, folks, it's easy because I know whose trailer it is.
Mm-hmm.
When it's that random trailer that suddenly shows up, it's a lot more detective work.
Fun, right? Mix it up.
Ask the police for a favor. Hey, can you run this VIN?
Mm-hmm.
all right, so it's basically 3 sentences then. So it's each year Parks and Rec will define the end date for winter and summer storage.
Mm-hmm.
Then the sentence on the 5 days, 7 days.
Mm-hmm.
And
Wait,
then-
hold on, what's the 5 days? I missed that part.
It was just 7 days.
Okay.
Okay.
I thought-
$50 a
I
day.
thought it
Any
was $50
unpermitted
a day.
trailers, yeah, okay.
Okay, so there's no
Yeah.
5 days. It's
50
basically
a day.
50 a day.
After
And-
7, it's abandoned. Yeah.
Correct.
And we shouldn't write it to make people interpret that this $50 ends after 7 days. It's basically they're fined $50 a day, and at the end of 7 days,
Will be considered abandoned.
it's considered abandoned. And then we'll have that. The last sentence would be any unregistered trailers left on, is it town property? Or is it marina property?
I feel like it would be marina property.
So any unregistered trailers left on marina
It'd
property
be better
will
to say
be
town
fined.
property just to cover the whole town. 'Cause
Yeah.
they parked it up at
Not
the
really in our
Richardson or
jurisdiction.
something. You know, I don't know.
No?
Really. It's not really in our, I mean.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
We probably have to stick to what's in our jurisdiction though, which is marina
Yeah.
or beach, but we don't even own the beach roads.
But I'd want to keep it at marina because if you had it at everywhere, I feel like that could suddenly buy somebody
Yeah.
7 days of storing their trailer
And
at
moving it.
Penfield
Yeah,
Mhm.
make it marina.
parking lot or something like that. You want
Marina
that, right?
property
Mhm.
would be fined $50 a day.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
after
move it
7
around.
days. Yeah.
So the
Or-
unpermitted or just trailers sitting there that are permitted have the same consequences?
Same consequences.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
But I would also say, like, if your permit has expired, you are no longer permitted. So, like, that's why I originally started with the unpermitted trailers. So, like, once that final end date happens, your permit is no longer valid. So maybe unpermitted or unpermitted or
So winter storage covers a broad period of time, and when that ends, they have 7 days to get it out or they lose it.
Mm-hmm.
Summer storage has a start and an end date, then after the end date, the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't cover the entire year, though, or does it? Does that cover the
it
entire
covers almost
calendar?
the entire calendar year. And there's overlap. Wi- Summer storage ends on a Sunday, and Monday winter storage starts. I have a gap between the end of winter storage and the beginning of summer trailer storage.
So it's really permitted or unpermitted trailers that are not covered in one of the storage programs,
Yeah.
summer or winter storage, left on marina property, and then that captures everything.
Mm-hmm.
Because they could be registered but not signed up for a
Right.
winter storage. And then, yeah. Okay. All right.
That was all I had.
Thank you.
Great. So you have what you need for the measuring, which is the most important thing.
Exactly.
The other changes, they would go in our recommendation once we're done going through whatever scope we want, or if we want to bring that section forward, we could, but probably want to go through the rest of whatever else we're going to look at and just recommend it as one. That's what we did last year.
Yeah, I think that, I totally,
The last time we did that. We just
I'm
went
at
through
the
whole
point
thing.
where I've got everything that I need, so it's not as time sensitive
Okay.
going forward and whatnot.
We could still recommend this next meeting just to
Yeah.
kind of stay on track and be like, okay, that's done,
Yep.
and then we can move on, you know.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay,
Cool.
so I'll put it in the minutes and then I'll copy you just in case I got any wording wrong and
Alright.
you can let me know.
And I'll email you
Perfect.
my stuff over.
All right.
Awesome, thanks.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Have fun.
Do you want to stick around for this part?
I think I gotta go see the kids. It's been a long day.
You don't have kids. Awkward.
How many kids do you have, Justin?
2.
2.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
So I guess the question is whether we want to go back, do we want to read through the rest of the marina rules and regulations, or do we want to consider that area done? When we did this last time, we basically just took each section and read through them. We read the statement and said, does that make sense? Does it need to be updated because we're in the 20th century?
Right.
Or are there things that have happened that would want us to tighten up or add to it?
Well, when did you say the last time that was done? 3 years ago?
You guys wrapped it up right when right as I was here. So yeah, that was 2019.
Yeah.
There's much change since then. And
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. What's changed?
I think,
Well, for example, one of the big things we dealt with was vaping and cigarettes. That was a huge discussion about, because the way the rules were written, vaping was not prohibited.
Right.
So but that's just the kind of thing that things that have happened in the world that need a tweaking of this.
I think I went through and, look at it more in depth, and if there's anything else and you want me to come back and hey, we've got a couple other things that, we're thinking about, I definitely would want to chime in when you guys are looking at that.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought they were pretty good for where they were prior to this.
3 years ago.
Yeah, it was just those couple little tweaks.
So you're comfortable with the marina section once we make these changes?
Yes.
I will default to you, Justin.
Check.
We don't
Marinas.
about submarines or anything, right?
We don't have something about submarines, and I hope you just didn't jinx it. I know we don't allow hovercraft,
Yeah.
Oh, I saw that in there.
and I mean that's the only other thing. At some point, we might have to figure out what we want to do with e-foils, but
Oh, yeah.
What's that?
those are those electric skim boards.
They're awesome.
They're awesome, but it wouldn't work in the marina because to make it work, you're either going too fast or you're going super slow, and then you have to be laying down like it's a surfboard or something like that.
Okay.
There's some guys that
You haven't seen them at the beach, so it's like a
Yeah.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
awesome with the big foil, and then you control how fast you go.
Right.
The faster you go, the higher above water you. Yeah,
I've only
really
seen
great.
him on the beach though. I've
Yeah.
never.
I've
You
seen
can hook those up to a boat.
No, they're self-propelled.
Oh,
They
okay.
have a little
okay.
electric motor.
So wouldn't that be considered a hoverboard?
No.
They are specific in the way that they're trying to market them. Is they don't want to be considered a power boat, and they don't want. They're also playing the game of we're not this, so you can't
Yeah.
Yeah,
legislate
totally.
us this way, and
yeah.
we're not. So
So do we just want to mention them then, along with hovercraft?
And then that could be
Or-
put easily into section D.
Well, it's not a hovercraft because part of it's below water.
Or you could say,
And
you could put or e-foil are prohibited in South Benson Marina. I mean, you can just put it in there, right?
we could put that in there. E-foil, yeah, and e-foil.
So you've seen them in the marina?
No, he's come and talked to me about launching from the marina, and I had the
Oh,
conversation.
I see. Because it's easier to unload versus
Correct.
carrying it over
Go
to the beach.
Mm.
And I was like, well, first off, when you're foiling, you're going at least 10, 15 knots, and that's too fast.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're going slow, you're a very small target that my big boaters would not be able to see very well.
Yeah.
And so for that purpose, we had the conversation. I talked with the Marine unit for the police department, and they agreed with me, yeah, we're not going to have them coming into the marina.
So do we want to add that in there? Or?
It
Pretty
seems like a
simple
pretty
ad, right?
straightforward ad.
Yeah,
I mean,
done.
you're protected
Yeah. Okay.
if they get more popular.
Yeah.
That's in section T.
T?
Yeah.
Okay.
And will you spell it for me? Just
I believe it's E dash
Foil.
Okay.
FOIL.
FOIL, I believe.
Yeah.
okay.
E4 or similar
Yeah, if anyone looks at that, it's like, what is that?
device.
Okay. They do look fun. Like.
Yeah.
I've ridden
Yeah.
one. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it's
When you
it's
fall off,
great.
is it fun? Or-
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it's easier than those jetpack ones. Those water jetpacks.
Yeah.
it's definitely easier.
Crazy.
All right.
Thanks, Justin.
So the other area that we said we would focus on, and we can circle back, and while you're here, maybe it would be good to have just an open discussion on fields, because that's another sensitive topic in town, and oftentimes leads to lots of discussions. And while you're here, we don't need to decide anything, but maybe have a discussion about what are the areas in the field related to fields that are things we should think about addressing. The section's not very long. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
no, it is brief, and it does leave a lot up to one's own understanding. But yeah, I'm going into my 5th year of overseeing field reservations here for the town of Fairfield. And so just in terms of, I guess, the way that it works, the lion's share of the reservations are April through November. There are a handful of like turf reservations through the winter, but the bulk of the permits takes place April through November. And in terms of the way that we issue field permits, so first and foremost, we make sure that our Parks and Rec programs are taken care of, whether that's soccer, softball, camp, really any of the contracted programs that we run as well. So before we even open up to anyone else, we make sure that our rec
so
program
you'll secure the fields, and they don't even become available to anyone. They are for.
Yep.
Can you just list those soccer, playground, playground camp?
Soccer, softball, playground camps, and any of our contracted programs.
Okay.
Next, after I ensure that the Parks and Rec program is taken care of, I work with Board of Ed. The athletic directors from Ward and Ludlow, and I make sure that their field needs are taken care of. Right now that's Gina and Tom I work with.
And that basically could take like the entire field, like the football field at Ludlow is just off limits. It's not permittable.
Yeah, and I actually don't have like reservation rights over the high school field, but for example, Todd will use Sturgis and Kiwanis and Hayden and Owen Fish. Let's see, Gina at Ward, they use...
that's for all the varsity, for all the high school teams.
Exactly, Melville.
They'll secure their practice times and that. Okay.
When you look at the fields in general in the town, from your vantage point, do you consider the high school field part of your mix?
No.
Or those are off limits?
They're off limits. I don't have access.
Yeah, so you don't have access to them, yet they can kind of come in and take away some of your access on occasion, right? Does it ever interrupt your programming?
It has never interrupted Parks and Rec programs, but I mean, NEST, for example, it does affect our formally recognized groups, like Fairfield National, that'll have a permit for Owen Fish, softball fields, but Ludlow has a game going that's running long, and so you'll have youth kids just standing there and waiting to go on. So it does have an impact, but Parks and Rec doesn't necessarily feel it. The formally recognized groups do.
But you don't. But you own Kiwanis, even though that's the high school field.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't own the rights to the football field. Ludlow. What about the new turf field? Who owns
Parks and Rec?
Yeah, because that's middle school.
So it's just the football fields at the high schools that you don't really
Ward has
control?
a softball field. I mean, it's any of the fields that
On
Ward or Ludlow.
Or the tennis
Well, at
court,
Ward you have
any of the
baseball,
facilities at Ward, right?
softball,
Tennis courts
football.
probably.
We actually do the reservations for the tennis courts.
Oh, you do?
There. Mm-hmm. It's just the field. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, but Kiwanis is different because it's not on the site.
Yeah,
You don't run Ward's baseball field, right?
No,
but
no.
but you do. But Kiwanis is
I handle the reservations for Kiwanis.
Okay, so it's just an exception.
After Parks and Board of Ed, then our formally recognized groups submit their schedules to me. So a formally recognized group, that would be like Fairfield United Soccer, Fairfield National, Fairfield American, Little League Girls Softball. So there's quite a few that I work with. So they provide their schedules, and they pretty much get, I'll just say, permits for the entire season. And there's the requirements that they need to provide a roster showing 100% Fairfield residency. They're also required to provide a signed hold harmless agreement, and as well as a certificate of insurance naming the town of Fairfield as additional insured.
Right. Who
America,
else besides maybe Fairfield United Soccer, Fairfield American, Fairfield National? Who else are your?
Little League Girls
Little League
Softball,
Girls Softball,
Okay.
Fairfield Youth Lacrosse, Fairfield Youth Football, Fairfield Rugby,
Wow.
Babe Ruth, and Legion.
I can't believe Babe Ruth is still around.
Yeah. Is
But
Mike
not like
whatever?
Thursday.
Is Mike whatever? his
It's
name?
cheaper
Mike
Yeah.
Menkes?
Yeah.
And it's, you know,
Yeah,
1,000,
Alvin
2,000
Peacock really is no longer
Different
like
one,
very
yeah,
actively
yeah.
involved,
Oh, yeah.
but the checks always come from him.
Yeah.
Mike Menke
I
is
thought they had
day
kids
to day.
outside Fairfield spotted on their roster, but I don't know.
Who's that?
I thought Babe Ruth had roster kids outside Fairfield. I think as far as is pretty much all Fairfield, but I thought Babe Ruth. But that's a while ago.
All of those groups that I just mentioned, except for the Little League, so not American National and Girls Softball, but all those other groups pay $25 a player per season.
Okay.
Separately, Fairfield American, Fairfield National, and Fairfield Little League Girls Softball, they pay capital improvement projects, and they pay our contracted landscaper directly to maintain, groom, and line their fields. And so National, they take care of Tungus Little League, American takes care of Mill Hill, and then Little League Girls Softball is Duke Yellow.
Well, American also does Gould, right?
We pay for those linings, though.
Okay.
After the formally recognized group, we open it up to outside groups. So that would be groups that have non-residents, or camps, or clinics. So examples of those groups would be like Ole Soccer, also Batting Cage and Rage, New England Hardball, Future Prospects. So I have a handful that I work with, and these groups are not required to provide a roster because it's known that they'll have non-residents. They still have to provide a hold harmless agreement. They still have to provide a certificate of insurance, but they pay a fee per hour. Presently, $75 an hour for a grass field, $100 an hour for turf.
Are those rates pretty competitive with neighboring towns?
Yeah, I did a call around recently,
Mm-hmm.
And it looked like...
What did you do? You pretended to be...
No. I reached out
Yeah.
to all of the, my counterparts through the Connecticut Parks and Recreation Association. And
good. So people communicate.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
good.
communicate. Yeah, I wasn't being shysty about it. And so at Westport and New Canaan, they charge $100 for grass reservations and $150 for turf. And I was thinking that could potentially be an opportunity for us. Again, presently we're 75 and 100, and I was going to recommend we transition to 100 and 150, but
Yeah.
So the difference in the permits, though, so the formally recognized groups can get a blanket permit for, you can have every Monday, Wednesday, Thursday from 5 to 7, you get own fish, and it's blocked out.
Mm-hmm.
And then the non-recognized groups basically pick from whatever, but they only can do it within like a 2-week period? Or
no, they can book for the season as well, but they're
Okay.
paying a fee for
Every
per
time they use
hour.
the...
So that's new, right? Or within the last few years? I thought it was. Or yeah,
Hey, Jamie, it's Anthony. Can you hear me?
We can.
Just to chime in, you are correct, Jamie. That is not the way you're describing it is how it always was. It's supposed to be 2 weeks in advance for those other groups.
Okay.
So but there is a part. Yeah, I think Galen uses the wording that's in there now that says her discretion.
Okay.
So, but that's part of the reason why this needs to be looked at.
Okay. Okay. So officially.
Going back.
Okay. It's 2 weeks, but you have the discretion if you think you have the capacity and because one of my issues I wanted to throw on the table is, I mean, having been a baseball parent and coach and all of that, is we want our families, our parents to get the advantage of our fields, and one of the way they get advantage is that they can plan out their entire summer. So if you have a child on let's say on Wolfpack, and they're not able to secure sort of a standard schedule, then you're having trouble planning out your summer with all your kids going everywhere. And I'm not saying open it wide up, but I'm saying maybe we should at least just look at that and say, if we had a program that was 99% Fairfield residents, I don't know if that's the right number, and so all of our residents are really enjoying that, would we then want them not to be eligible for sort of planning out their summer? And it's one thing for the program to not be able to do that, but it impacts the parents, right? Because suddenly your son or your daughter, you can't say that every single Tuesday you have. I mean, I think it impacts them, and I'm not suggesting we change it. I'm suggesting we at least look at that and say, is there some reasonable percentage there, or because I love the concept that the fields are for the people who are paying for it, but is there some way we want to consider tweaking that rule so that, and part of it is, does it really affect these groups? So like taking Wolfpack, Rage, some of the other, your soccer, would it make it, are they close to where there's only a handful out of 400 that are causing them to not be approved, or is it beyond that where it's not even something that's worth talking about?
Well, I guess twofold. One, I could never answer that question intelligently because I've never seen a roster.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't know if it's
Sure.
one person or half of their team. I wouldn't know.
Right.
And then separately, I have only been doing this for 5 years, and I really, when I started, trained myself on the permits that I found from my predecessor.
Sure.
And so a group like Ole, they'll book the entire summer. And so I just continued doing that. And so I don't limit these outside groups to 2 weeks. I've been booking them the whole season. Just the difference is that they're just paying by the hour.
Okay.
Yeah, if I could just chime back in here, you've got to be careful with the whole non-resident thing because
Sure.
Right now we don't allow any non-residents to book our fields, right? So a couple of years ago, I think some of you were on the commission when there was an open choice student that was playing in the youth football league or wanted to play in the youth football league, and they came to the commission and said, we'd like to make a request to allow this one non-resident to play in the league because he goes to school here. Well, we were willing to do it, but they were going to lose their blanket permits, which meant they had to then call in every 2 weeks. And as Jamie just pointed out, you can't run a league calling in every 2 weeks. It's almost impossible. So the only league that has the exception is the adult softball league. We allow 3 non-residents per team. And that's it. Those are the only ones. And again, that happened because we had so many non-residents playing that there was a huge field shortage when it came to the softball fields. And that was, probably 15, 16 years ago now.
15 years.
When that went into effect. So that's the risk you run when you start trying to open it up to non-residents or to a percentage of non-residents.
Right.
I don't disagree that it might be worth looking at, but there's larger ramifications. And then to Galen's point, Olay running a soccer clinic or camp in the summer is definitely different. It's a whole different animal when you run a clinic or a camp versus, a league.
Right.
Something that's going to happen for 1 week period for 3 hours a day, much different, than something that's going to happen, 60 times over a season. So, again, kind of two different animals there.
Yeah. Well, I know it came up with the whole Fairfield American Little League, or all the Little Leagues, when Little League changed their international rules and allowed kids from other towns if you were going to play with the kids in the schools that they go to. So if you had a Bridgeport student that went to Mill Hill, they wanted them to play with the kids that they go to school with, and I remember that was the Matt McGuire era, right? I think. So
yep.
So at this point, if Fairfield American decides to put an outside student, a non-resident student, on their roster because he goes to school in Fairfield, that would officially disqualify them from their current status.
Right. They
Correct.
wouldn't be eligible for those blanket permits for the student.
Okay.
I guess I'm just having trouble understanding now the difference. Like, what would they then have to do if it's not the 2-week in advance call?
So the last tier of reservations is available for Fairfield residents.
Oh, so just be whatever's left.
Yep, and that's residents are able to call in up to 2 weeks in advance and reserve 2 hours twice a week, 2 weeks in advance. There's no charge, there's no insurance, there's no full term list, there's no rosters, there's nothing like that. And so for a formally recognized group, if they weren't doing like a season or a blanket permit, they could have the opportunity to call in every 2 weeks, but it would be, again, very difficult to find consistency in that approach.
Yeah.
Galen, are you currently, you're managing this yourself manually, right? Are you using any technology for this?
We use a software system called RecTrack.
And is that software, I don't know anything about it, but does that software system take a lot of work off your plate? Like, are we using that to the best of its abilities? Like, for example, when I play paddle, I can go into a system and I reserve a time, and I'm only allowed to do one a day, and the system knows it. And if I don't show up, I get fined, so it forces you to have to use that space. I think something like that would work really well in town. Is our software program kind of set up to do something like that?
We could, yeah, and we do have that in place for tennis and pickleball reservations. So residents can make their own reservations. We don't presently have a financial component though tied into it. I'm sure that's possible, but like if someone no-shows for a reservation, we don't have like a penalty fee that is incurred.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, it would be possible to manage the fields like pickleball and tennis is now with that software program? You think so?
I'm not sure what the question is. Like, could you as a resident?
No. I'm just saying, could we for purposes of being more efficient, could we, or I don't know if efficient is the right word, but could we use the system that is currently used for pickleball and tennis? Could we apply that to everything else in town, all the fields that have usage needs?
It's absolutely possible. I would still ultimately need to book at least Recreation and Board of Ed first to make sure those are accounted for.
Right.
But potentially the leagues could book their own fields.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm thinking in a situation where you have a field reserved for Tuesday, it rains Tuesday, and you have to get a practice in or you have to get a game in. That becomes a nightmare. I think for everybody.
Yep.
If we use the software program in that situation, I think it would minimize some of that pain. Because, you're basically, everybody's bound to the same rules, and here's the system where you have to reserve that field. Listen, if it's not a problem in terms of field usage, I just think the software is designed for
you have your blanket permits for Little League teams and that, so they wouldn't have to use it because they know if it rained out on Tuesday, they just reschedule the game because they have control of the fields. So you're talking about the people who are will league depend, who have outside people.
I think it's both. I think it's really everybody. I can tell you as a baseball coach for my son that, there are days when we get rained out during the summer and we can't have that same field the next day, so.
Different from Mill Hill and Tungus. For the other fields, it's, there's lots of people vying for it. So I think that's your point. What you're talking about is not really for Mill Hill and Tungus where that field's dedicated to them, but it's for
shared field.
The fields.
And ultimately, if there is a rain cancellation now of a game or a practice, my point of contact with the leagues will just reach out to me directly to reschedule, and that's twofold. I coordinate with the landscaping company on when fields are groomed and lined. So if your game was rained out and you wanted to reschedule it for the next day, technically I need to know if you want that field groomed and lined.
Right.
Because we don't groom and line every field every day.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, in that scenario, you can have the program set up so that it sends an email to whoever to say, hey, the game got rained out, do you want the field lined for the next game? I think that there are lots of good ways to use technology to make a more efficient use of the field.
I understand what you're saying. We started using a new technology within my company. We switched to a completely different platform, and it really prioritizes client types and what they're allowed to do within that certain thing, and then we're able to go in and communicate with them. It's all text now because nobody reads their emails.
Right.
But a lot of it is automated, and it takes the human aspect out of things. I don't know if people would like that or not because they're probably used to speaking with you, and there's a lot that goes into the rain delays and all that kind of thing. So I get both sides. I get everything's automated and everything's via app and via this and that, but so many moving parts here, and I can see why it would be an undertaking to take something like that on.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah.
So the only ones that you're actually charging and having to collect money, chase for money, are the sort of the unrecognized groups.
So those formally recognized groups, they pay $25 a head per season.
Right. So that's a one-time. You just have to chase them once up front, and they say, I've got 400 kids, here's your $8,000.
Yep.
But the other ones, the non-recognized groups who are paying $75, $100,
that's correct.
If they reserve a field and it rains, then that's money we've lost, probably, right? Or you just reschedule, or how do you collect from them? Is it?
Yeah, they usually provide a credit card or pay by check. So I created a situation this past year where I wasn't as diligent with the group, and their kind of spring permits bled into their summer permits, and before I knew it, they had about $16,000 worth of permits.
We know what that is.
And I had trouble getting them to respond to me. And so we in the department identified an opportunity to perhaps give some teeth or perhaps make one of our rules more enforceable. And I think it's specifically Section 47 on scheduling fee rules for fields and parks. I think it's page 15. Potentially there would be an opportunity to kind of more define the verbiage to match what the actual policy is, which is on our website, and it's a 50% non-refundable deposit is due at the time of booking, with the remainder due 2 weeks prior to program start. And I think potentially if I had that, it might not have gotten as out of control as I allowed it to.
Your fees here also are out of date, right?
Yeah,
the
because you have
50
15 hours, 75.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
section.
Same section going 47.
50 for Field and 75 for Tomlinson. So we have to update
different?
that.
It doesn't have that at all in mine.
Section 47
47?
Yeah, I don't have that at all.
says fees for function listed in section.
Well, I can see that her copy is different than ours. Our sections are bolded. Or hers are bolded. Ours aren't even bolded.
And it says 1/3. Did you say it was 50%? Mm-hmm. Yeah, this says 1/3.
Yeah.
So do we have a wrong?
I got mine off the website.
It definitely sounds like Kelly provided an outdated copy of the rules. 'Cause all that stuff has been updated, obviously.
Okay.
Okay.
That's actually, okay.
Sorry about that.
Let's just
I just want to
QC
get
that.
the wording down
Right,
of
like,
what we're.
yeah, we should probably get the fresh one and just make sure they match up with everything
Yeah,
afterwards.
definitely.
So,
Do you mind?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a 50% non-refundable deposit is due at the time of booking, with the remainder being due 2 weeks prior to program start.
So that way, if a Rage schedules out and you give them, here's your full. I mean, I like the idea of having some flexibility because there are a lot of Fairfield residents there, and you know it's not a group of 90% out of state, so you have some leeway there, but you get the money up front, and then you don't have to chase them for rosters or whatever. You get the money up front.
Right.
When it gets to be like $16,000, I'm sure Sharma was hard to reach suddenly.
Yeah. No, and it's my fault.
No problem. It happens. It's all settled. So, is there a shortage of fields for teams that want them?
Yeah, in fact, we've done field usage analysis. We just went through our huge master planning process, and we identified that our fields presently are overused. They're in really bad shape. We definitely could benefit from the addition of fields, the conversion to turf fields. But we're very limited in field space in spring and fall, if anything at all. I usually have the most flexibility without the group this summer. Mm-hmm.
But programs are able to run. I mean, they're all surviving right now, so we're figuring out. So you're not getting parent complaints that my Wolfpack, I have a kid on Wolfpack and he doesn't get field, so we're not hearing the public complaint.
No. And if anything, this past year we've made strides with the group of asking for their actual trued up schedules so that we don't have situations where fields are just blocked for a formally recognized group and no one's on them.
Yeah.
That used to happen quite frequently, so just this past year we wrote a few new procedures to prevent that from happening, and that's been harder to manage in the day-to-day, but ultimately better to give a truer picture of what our actual field usage is.
Okay. Can we take a look at that field usage information?
Yeah, it was actually included in the master plan,
Oh, okay.
but I can extract that and share
No,
it with
that's
the group.
fine. If it's in the master plan, I can pull it.
It is there.
So is there from your perspective, is there anything this committee can do other than getting the right version of this? Is there anything we can do to help you with your job of having to manage all these groups? Are there some specific points that you would like to see us think about that can help you?
I think ultimately there's not many rules and policies for this field usage, and I think there's pros and cons to that. I think it gives me some flexibility. Sure. So if we do have open space, I know that I do have the flexibility to book it. I think in the 5 years that I have been doing this, we've gone through a few, I would say, outlandish situations of the remediation and fill pile situation where we've had every field closed, and or COVID where we've had to cancel every program and close every field. And so I think I almost feel like there's not been a same year every year that I've done this.
Rebuild Gould for the 15th time.
But yeah, I don't necessarily feel like these rules are preventing me from doing my job. I just this situation that just came up this year, I was I think we need a way to kind of circumvent this and prevent it from happening in the future.
Okay.
What kind of feedback do you get from the people you work with on fields, generally speaking? What are some of the complaints or issues that you hear about most?
That's hard to say. This year we've been working really closely with Greenway, who's our contracted vendor. A challenge that came up this year is that, on Saturdays and Sundays, I'll just say the Little Leagues all want to have games starting at 9 a.m., And so Greenway was unable to get every field game ready condition for 9 a.m. So we had to kind of roll out staggered starts. That, I would have to say, caused a lot of frustration, especially in the fall when you start to lose the hours of daylight. That was an issue that we came into this year. I would say that was a big issue. But I mean, in terms of like accessibility, I feel like I have a really good communication with the group. Sometimes in our own department, there's an opportunity for the field maintenance side of things to have better communication with the actual departments themselves.
Yeah.
I know that there was a huge issue that happened this past year at Gould, where I think all the fencing was taken out for a project, and I didn't know. And we had games scheduled at both schools simultaneously, and neither game could happen because of field maintenance, and none of us here in the team even realized it. And so it's like 5:30 on a Friday night, me trying to look on my phone to see like what other fields are available, you know. So I mean, our own department could have better communication, but that's us, you know.
Do you get many individual residents calling in to reserve fields?
We do.
For their own personal use and I thought.
What was it before? I'm just curious.
I've done a baseball party.
Oh, like a party. Okay, got it. Cool.
So there's no cost to the resident,
That's
right? But don't they have to? Aren't they liable if there's an injury during the hour and a half that they're on the field?
Liability is a good question. They're not required to provide any sort of, you know, insurance or hold harmless agreement to make a reservation. It's like, I would just say, like, at their own risk.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, similarly for anyone like using a playground, I feel like.
Yeah.
But you're signing, I think, when you issue that, because you issue them a permit, right? You send it to them. It's in their name, and I think the permit itself says you're liable, if I recall. I used to do it occasionally, I admit it. But you don't have instances where a resident would call in personally, reserve the field, and then suddenly a baseball team shows up. Like one of the dads is asked to do that on behalf of a program, and then there's no cost.
I think that happens for example, who are the groups like Fury or Revolution? I feel like I've heard, or even there's a Irish football club.
Gaelic football.
Yeah, they'll call in though.
I wonder if that's something we want to somehow put some management around, because you have an individual parent calling in, securing a field for their personal use, and then an organized team comes on the field.
Yeah, but the individual would have to do it every day, right? They're not getting a blanket. So it would, and I think at some point you start to see a trend that this person is reserving it. That should be obvious to us, right?
We have 3 dads rotate through over the course of, you know, every 3 weeks or whatever.
And I'm not necessarily booking.
We did that a
all
lot.
of them.
4 or 5 years ago, we did that all the time.
But
we had parents
that would
rotate
happen
through. I was one of them.
I think there might be like, if I pulled every permit, there might be like 4 or 5 residents that call in regularly every 2 weeks for field space.
I mean, do we think it's a problem? So what Jamie, you're saying?
I just know what used to happen 4 or 5 years ago is...
You know, what happens is they're charging a fee, too, and, like, they're pocketing the money, you know, and town's not benefiting from it.
Sounds like a good business plan.
Yeah.
How much is it happening? I don't know. But are you just concerned that it's taking away too much time from our residents? Field time?
I guess I'm raising it for a few points. One is the liability of it. This individual resident that's getting this, and then suddenly an organized team comes on the field. Where's the liability of especially like in baseball, somebody gets hurt? Who is it? Is it the resident? Is it the team? Is it the town? And it is skirting around the process that you want them. You want the team to call in, reserve, show their insurance or whatever, and so we're getting around it. And if there's nothing to stop it from happening other than field availability.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That if you were doing that for a baseball team, and you call up on Wednesday and say, I need the field tomorrow, Thursday, nothing's available because all the organized teams have taken.
Already taken it.
There's usually fields available. Like if you just said, I need a field this, next weekend, there's usually a field somewhere, right, for a 2-hour period. We're not that solid thing.
Yeah, I think just this past year, we've been working with the leagues to true up their permits, and so really only this past year, there's been like more pockets of time available. If anything, a big challenge that this department has run into, I'll say specifically in the past 2 or 3 years, has been organizations running their business on town property and us not necessarily having anything in the rules and regulations to stop that from happening. So specifically, I'll say a tennis instructor setting up, I'll just say, shop at Schools Manor or Veterans and having back-to-back lessons. And so potentially the residents are all calling to book their time, but there's someone conducting their business on property. Yeah. Or even, just last summer, those pop-up picnics, which are Instagram beautiful, were all over our beaches. There's 2 young ladies that have different stand-up paddleboard businesses that were operating out of our beaches, and we don't necessarily have anything in our rules and regulations that say you can't run a business on town property. Mm-hmm. And so we weren't necessarily. So I'll send threatening emails, but it doesn't necessarily do anything.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm glad we're having
We
this
should definitely
discussion. I think we should
limit that. Yeah, how do you?
Yeah,
That's not right. That's not right.
Food
Yeah.
camps at Jennings Beach, at 7 a.m. They don't have a permit for this.
I get a permit. I get a permit every time.
Every time. Every time.
And that's where your technology comes into play, where you make it easy for a resident.
Yeah.
I just have a quick question. Somebody just asked me about. She was saying she was running into field issues for. She coaches field hockey. I want to say middle school. Why would that be a problem for her? You don't know.
I don't know.
Oh, so she said she can't ever find a field.
For field hockey?
Yeah.
They got to be on turf.
Yeah, they have to be on turf.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's a big
It's a
problem.
Connecticut mandate.
Because we lose our football field half the time for
Field hockey.
field hockey. We're in the grass.
Mm.
They're on the field.
Right. You got a game in a couple days against Darien.
And we're in the grass.
Yeah, exactly.
Kicking
You're
field
practicing
goals.
in the grass.
Kicking field goals, imaginary field goals.
Bad enough to have to play Darien. But.
So 2 areas we sort of identified that might need some discussion. One is businesses operating on our town property without the proper licensing or permitting, and then the other is the whole area of a resident calling in and reserving, let's say, we'll use a baseball field as an example, and then it's not used for personal use. Because I think you're saying it's fine if a field's available and a dad wants to get his kid and 3 friends together, the field's there, go get it, it's yours, you can use it. But then if they do have, again, parents of players and they're just rotating through and they're not paying a fee and they're not really being managed, then that's wrong when the other programs are paying the fees for it and working up front with you, both from a liability and also a revenue.
Under section 26 on page 12, you have no person shall expose any article or thing for sale in any town beach, marina, park, or open space area unless a permit is issued by Parks and Recs. So you could probably maybe in there put something in there.
Add a fee or something.
Or private lessons and,
I think the bigger, how do we police that? That's, because really they would say, I'm not selling anything, because the guy's going to Venmo me after, so I'm not selling them anything on the beach.
well, the lessons, the tennis lessons, if someone's waiting You know, and they see a guy there, and there comes another little girl or boy.
Oh, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
there comes another.
When you said that, my neighbor
Yeah.
does that. I never thought of that. She goes over to Owen Fish, and she takes lessons and pays the guy. I don't know what she pays, but never even thought
I mean,
of
the
it.
only way to manage is the risk of, if they're found out to be, going against the policy, then they get no more permits. They get, I mean, that's the risk, that you scare people away from being caught. But yeah, it's hard to.
Yeah, but
Or a fine of some sort.
But even in the case of the stand-up paddleboard business, how do you enforce that? Because they're
required to have a permit.
Does the Parks and Rec
For what,
department have,
because once
this
you
parking
go
lot,
the
or is
line
that the
below the
town's
rack
business?
line, it's state property, right, or federal property?
There's a boot camp that's held out here in this parking lot too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the
Which-
pop-up moms. Yeah.
Problematic for me because I pay rent right next door.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a deeper conversation, I think.
Yeah, that goes beyond our scope, I think, but.
All right. 8:30. No, I'm glad it was a good discussion. I think we have a few points on fields we shouldn't rush into, and it sounds like also the whole approach of having only put the rules that are really necessary gives you more flexibility to manage it, and we're fortunate to have someone like you that's able to, to manage it, and without that flexibility, people are going to use the rules against the administration of the program.
Anthony, are you still on?
He's having dessert by this time.
Waxing his car.
I'm here. Sorry, I was just muted.
I just have a quick question. The one Melville field that has the fence, that's not 200 feet, right? That's less than 200?
I believe it's less than 200, and there's an age limit on there, which they limited to, I believe it's 12, actually 13 and under. They don't allow anybody old. There's signs up and everything.
I mean, I would suggest that be lowered because 12-year-olds hit the ball 225 yards. I mean, that's Little League now. So the official is 225.
25 feet.
So these kids are hitting it, into the other fields. I would move it to 10 and under or something, or 11 and under. Just for that safety reason for the kids in the other fields.
And that may be something. I don't know if to put it in writing. Maybe we do. I'm not 100% sure, but it might be something that we can just work out with Fairfield National, who uses that field, primarily. And I don't think they schedule the older kids there anyway. But
they never did when I went through there. But I just, if there's any that we have to make up a game, let's throw them on Melville.
Melville is used for 9 and 10-year-olds.
Well, when I went through, it was 10 and 11.
There could be some 11. Actually, there's some 11s that would play on it too. It's the AAA field.
Yeah.
So the level just below the Little League teams, the teams that go to Williamsport.
Yeah. So
there's not a whole lot of balls going out of Mel too. At least for the games that I've been to in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
There haven't been very many.
But if they have to move a bigger kids game there, that's all. But I don't know why they would.
Yeah, I don't know that it's ever happened.
Yeah. So I just.
that is the one. It's a valid concern, and that is the one field that we do get complaints from the neighbors about balls being hit into their yard. It happens all the time. So
Dover too, right? Didn't you get complaints for Dover?
Dover, we normally get complaints about parking. I don't recall any complaints because I think they put T-ball and coach pitch up there. But a lot of times we get complaints about parking.
Anthony, I ever tell you the story about that net in right field at Mel 2?
Nope, I don't think so.
That protects the house there?
Yep.
I've been telling my kids for 5 years that they put that net up because I hit the house too many times. And they all believed me. So
very nice.
Okay. So this was a good discussion. I think we can pick up fields. We'll get the latest update copy, and then we can pick up fields next time. And Yeah, and Anthony, if there's any specific issues in fields other than the ones we identified, we're happy to discuss them. But yeah, obviously, we want to do whatever we can to help you to manage the resource.
No, we appreciate that, and I think you guys, hit all the hot topics, the important things tonight, and I thought Galen laid it out nicely. So, thank you guys for looking at this stuff because it definitely helps.
Okay. All right. So is that it?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. Send it.
Thank you guys.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Good night.